I was shaking the second I stepped into my parents' backyard. Every single time I forced myself to show up, I whispered the same thing. Stay calm, keep distance, guard up. I was 29 years old, a grown woman, a single mom raising an 8-year-old girl named Lily. My entire world revolved around one thing: protecting her from everything I survived. My parents always acted like I was being overdramatic, like I invented trauma out of thin air. Normal families fight sometimes, they'd say. But here's the thing. My parents never fought my sister Natalie. They fought me, they punished me, they tore me down piece by piece. Natalie was the golden child, treated like royalty from the day she was born. We were at this backyard barbecue because my mom guilt-tripped me into coming. She said people were starting to notice how distant I'd become. Don't embarrass us because you can't move on from childhood nonsense. Childhood nonsense. That's what she called years of humiliation. Lily was standing next to me in her little pink hoodie and jeans. She'd just come from dance practice. Still dressed, still buzzing with excitement. She thought she'd get burgers and play with cousins. Natalie walked outside in her designer romper like she was filming a reality show. She looked Lily up and down like she was inspecting damaged goods at a clearance rack. Wow, Natalie smirked. Still doesn't dress her like a girl that matters. Lily's head dropped. My jaw locked. Not today, I told myself. No fights, no explosions, no traps. Natalie stepped closer and whispered, so only I could hear. You seriously think that kid's going to become anything special? You're raising a downgrade of yourself. I didn't respond. My mother laughed with her like it was the funniest joke ever told. That's what happens when you don't pick the right men, Mom said. Trash breeds trash. Lily reached for my hand. I squeezed back hard. My dad walked up behind me and said, You look miserable, Danny. Maybe if you tried being more feminine growing up, you wouldn't have ended up a single mother. This was their sport. Psychological hunting. I told Lily, Go sit by the edge and watch the water. I'll fix you a plate. I turned away for 5 seconds. 5. When I spun back around, Natalie was standing behind Lily, and then she shoved her straight into the deep end of the pool, fully clothed, jeans, hoodie, socks, everything. My scream didn't even sound human. It was primal. I ran toward the pool without thinking. Lily was sinking. Her hair spread like black ink underwater. She wasn't coming up fast. She was 8 years old. She panicked. I tried to jump in, but my dad grabbed me by the neck. I tore myself out of his grip and threw myself into the pool. Lily's eyes were open, wide, panicked, searching for me. She was still conscious, but barely. I wrapped my arm around her chest and kicked us both up. When I got her out of the water and held her shaking, coughing, choking, trying to breathe, I looked back at them. My sister smirked like she'd done something iconic. My dad fixed his shirt like nothing happened. My mother rolled her eyes and said, Drama queen, over one dip. I held Lily tighter. That was the exact moment something shifted inside me. Something hard, something final. This wasn't a family anymore. This was a threat. And right there, dripping water, holding my daughter shivering and coughing, I made a decision. Their world was going to break next. Not mine. Because this time, I wasn't surviving them. I was going to end their access to us. And they wouldn't see it coming. I called 911 before I could think twice. My hands were still shaking. Lily was coughing under her breath, foam at the corner of her mouth, hair plastered to her face. The operator stayed calm and told me to keep her warm and lay her on her side. Paramedics arrived in minutes that felt like an hour. They were gentle, professional, and immediately took over with that quiet competence that made the panic in my chest shrink just enough to breathe. They cut away Lily's soaked clothes, wrapped her in blankets, checked her lungs and heart, and told me to come with them to the ER for observation. I sat in the ambulance with her head on my lap and watched her eyelids flutter like a bird just trying to steady itself. At the hospital, they ran tests and monitored her oxygen levels. The nurse who held her hand while I filled out forms had a look I recognized, the look of someone who'd seen horror disguised as family fun before. The ER doctor asked the exact kind of questions that made the lies my parents had always told about me impossible to keep quiet. Who was with her? Who pushed her? Who restrained you when you tried to help? I told the truth in the clipped sentences of someone who'd practiced this confession in her head for years. They recorded statements. They documented bruises in the timeline. The hospital social worker sat with me afterward and said softly, "I will make the call that needs to be made so your child is protected." I didn't ask for names. I only nodded. The police came and took formal statements. Officers walked the backyard, photographed the pool, took witness testimonies from cousins who finally admitted they saw Natalie shove Lily and that Mom laughed. When officers asked about Dad's comment, "If she can't survive water, she doesn't deserve life," they wrote it down, verbatim. On the way home from the ER with Lily bundled and sleeping on my shoulder, an officer handed me a card and said, "We've filed a report and referred this to Child Protective Services. A worker will contact you within 24 hours. The bureaucratic language felt clinical and cold, but under that thin paper layer was a system that could stop them from opening that door again. CPS called at dawn. The caseworker, a woman named Sophia with steady eyes, visited our temporary safe motel room an hour later. She spoke plainly about options: an emergency safety plan, supervised visitation only, a temporary safety order, school notification so Lily would never be released to them. She explained the process without drama and said they would coordinate with school administrators and the police to ensure compliance. Hearing her describe the mechanisms of protection made something inside me uncoil. Tools were finally in place that enforced safety instead of begging for it. I signed the forms. I handed over my phone with the screenshots I'd been saving for years, the texts, the insults, the recordings I'd never dared to play in front of them. Sophia filed them as evidence. She called the school, spoke to the principal, and by lunchtime, Lily had a confidential safety code in her file. Teachers and staff were notified to never release her to anyone without my written consent or a verified supervised plan. The school assigned a trusted staffer to pick her up from class if needed until this was sorted. That bureaucracy moved like a shield. Word spread in a different kind of network, quieter and more deliberate than gossip. I met privately with the pastor of the small church my parents used to parade around, and I gave him a factual account without venom. A child put in danger, witnesses who saw it happen, and a father who actively stopped rescue. He didn't take it to the altar. He made a private call to a prayer ministry that offered family counseling, but also to the community elders who managed church events. We cannot allow children to be at risk in our fellowship. Within days, the volunteer roster that had once glorified my dad's leadership stopped listing his name. He was quietly removed from youth volunteering roles pending investigation. No viral post, no public spectacle, just institutions that quietly closed the doors he used to walk through with swagger. I also reached out to 2 people I trusted in my parents' social circle quietly with calm facts and asked them to support a simple boundary: no unsupervised contact with Lily, and no social events where kids would be present until the investigation concluded. To my surprise, a cousin who once giggled with Mom about my failures texted back, "I didn't know. That should not have happened. I'll keep my children away from their house." That was small, but it mattered. Social shields were assembling around us without spectacle. My lawyer, a friend's recommendation who specialized in domestic safety, drafted an emergency protection letter and sent it to the police and CPS describing the pattern and the immediate danger. I did not seek revenge in headlines. I sought legal administrative closure, supervised visits only, school protections, and a clear paper trail that would make any attempt at intimidation traceable and enforceable. The lawyer also advised me on custody options should I decide to keep Lily's life away from them permanently. We didn't file for that overnight. We built the foundation slowly with evidence, doctor's notes, and witness statements. Behind the scenes, I built a practical fortress: change of phone numbers, a new mailing address for school documents, new locks on the small apartment door, small bureaucratic moves that cost nothing in spectacle but everything in safety. I arranged with Elena to be a listed emergency contact for Lily at extracurriculars. I enrolled Lily in a local swim class where instructors were trained in water safety and child protection. And I made sure sessions were at times my parents could never plausibly attend without notice. I taught Lily how to float and how to shout for help in a calm voice. It was a lesson wrapped in empowerment rather than fear. And I made another set of decisions for them to feel loss where they had always felt pride. My dad had been the one who bragged about hosting barbecues, about the backyard pool parties where his friends brought their expensive trucks and poured wine. I canceled the next family event invitation. Not with a post, not with drama, but by calling his closest friend, the man who co-hosted those gatherings, and explaining the situation in plain terms. I can't bring Lily to that party given what happened. He confirmed privately that the next gathering would be adults only and away from the house. It gutted his social stage. He noticed the absence of applause, and he didn't even know why. I did not call the news. I did not weaponize their shame on social platforms. I used structure, institution, and quiet community pressure, medical records, police reports, school protections, church stewardship, and volunteer policies to remove access and privilege systematically. The difference between that and spectacle is important. Spectacle feeds their ego when they play victim. Structure removes the levers they use to manipulate and hide behind. At night, I would rock Lily in the small bed and tell her stories of brave dinosaurs who learned to swim, not to remind her of what happened, but to teach her she could be more than fear. She began sleeping longer stretches. She started to eat more at breakfast. She picked up crayons again. Watching her small, steady recovery while the people who caused it were slowly cut out of their roles felt like a new kind of revenge, one that left them smaller, not by shame posts, but by the slow evaporation of the privileges that allowed cruelty to be masked as normal life. A week later, I returned to my parents' house for one reason only: to collect the rest of Lily's belongings. No emotion, no shaking voice, no begging. I walked in with Sophia from CPS and a police officer. Not alone, not vulnerable. My dad looked confused, like he still believed somehow the world would reset and I'd just get over it. Mom tried to start ranting immediately. "Oh, please, Danny, you're dragging this out. You love drama more than air." The officer cut her off. "We're here to retrieve the child's personal items. This is not a negotiation." Natalie tried to walk toward Lily's room like she still owned every part of my life, and Sophia stopped her with just one finger raised. "You are not permitted to be involved in this process. Return to the living room." Natalie actually froze for once. I went upstairs and packed Lily's favorite dolls: her sketchbook, her pajamas, her little hair ties, her backpack, everything. When I came downstairs, my parents were standing there like kids who finally realized no adult was coming to protect them this time. I looked at my dad directly in the face for the first time in my life without fear. "You will never have access to my child again. Not supervised, not public, not holidays, not at school, not ever." He laughed, a pathetic half-laugh. But it died halfway out because right then, at that exact moment, the officer handed him the emergency no-contact order papers that were just approved. He wasn't allowed within 300 feet of Lily. Mom wasn't either. Natalie wasn't either. He didn't even get warning. He didn't get a chance to argue. It was already filed, already active, already real. That was my revenge. Not a speech, not a dramatic show. I demolished the only weapon they ever had over me: access. I walked out, Lily holding my hand, Sophia on one side, the officer on the other. Their faces looked like their oxygen had been ripped away, not because of guilt, but because for the first time in their lives, I took power and they couldn't touch it, twist it, or destroy it. And as that front door shut behind me, they finally understood. They didn't lose a fight. They lost us forever.